Alive, yes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the professor.
Yes, he's the professor.
I don't know who that is right there. And then we have little Miss Incognito over there. And I assume I didn't even ask Kevin in the pre-show exactly does he have a doll that he's going to try to talk to tonight?
Yes, I have Shirley with the pink eyes over here that I can talk to.
Oh, that's Shirley Temple.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get get it on my phone so I can do what we were doing the other night.
What did you do the other night? We can do.
I was listening to it, but I had me muted and I stayed on and I was repeating everything because I was getting to hear it twice and trying to make sure you guys could hear it the second time.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about from the spirit box.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now I got it. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Really Big Show. We already have somebody on one of the sites there viewing our wonderful evening of strange happenings.
Yes.
And of course, we usually start out, not every time, but 99.999% of the time, we start out with Kevin trying to communicate with one of his dolls to see what information he can get, besides the fact of they all say, set me free, set me free. And then there was one that said, feed me, feed me. Okay. But anyway, so he's going to start out with a Shirley Temple doll. I believe we can find out if Shirley Temple enjoyed, being forced as a child actor or not. And of course, that doll may have not had any connection to Shirley Temple at all, besides it's a Shirley Temple doll. So I don't know if Kevin knows the background of this doll or not, but we're going to find out. Because the rest of the show, according to Kevin, Abel's brother Cain, the murderous family, who couldn't get along religiously speaking, my sacrifice is better than your sacrifice. He used a rock. He didn't use a knife.
Yeah. I got a rock here.
Yeah. So I believe that Kevin wanted after this to talk about Poltergeist.
Poltergeist.
And Poltergeist is one of those spirits that you just keep losing your keys. They keep moving from here to there. And why did my cup get in the kitchen when it was right here by my bed? And who moved my pillow? And I had the bed made up, but when I came home and nobody was home, my bed is all ruffled up. And what's going on here? It must be a poltergeist. What kind of face was that? So anyway, so we're going to back out of here and we'll let Kevin entertain us. And pay close attention. If you hear something, put it in the chat box and tell us, oh, I heard the Shirley Temple doll say, let me go, free my people.
No, they don't say that.
But help us to catch, because it's easy to miss things. And part of that's because Kevin just won't shut the hell up. Okay.
Look who's talking. That's the loudmouth pot calling the kettle black.
I let him have the whole show last week and he didn't thank me.
You went and fell asleep somewhere. Well, thank you for falling asleep during the show.
You're welcome. I enjoyed every minute of it. All right, ladies and gentlemen. And now, for your listening pleasure, here's Kevin Cain.
Yes.
And his Shirley Temple doll. And his EVP spirit box.
Yes, surely. And I'm going to turn, before I turn the spirit box on, I'm going to turn, and if there's a spirit with Shirley, I apologize for shining this at you, but I wanted people to see her pink eyes. Look at that. Oh, Shirley with the pink eyes. Now, this isn't an old doll. This probably is maybe 30 or, well, it's 30 or 40 years old, but when I say it's not old, I mean it's more vintage. It's not antique. It didn't come out at the time that Shirley was a little girl dancing around. This is a porcelain reproduction of those old compo dolls they used to do back then. But the creative color of the eyes, that's amazing. Now, I don't know if this is spirited. Although I've had her sitting here on my desk for over a week now. And while I work, I feel like she's there watching me. So even though her doll isn't staring at me, I feel like somebody's there watching. So we'll see if anything picks up on the spirit box. Let me go ahead and cut this light off. But the story behind the lovely Shirley is that, well, I don't even know if there's a story, but our friend Kayleen, who's been on this show before, who moved to Virginia and has herself an old haunted mansion, apparently had a friend who passed away, or somebody close, somebody related to a friend of hers passed away, and they had an estate sale, and they had several dolls. And this one, well, the others were very antique and they were expensive, so I couldn't afford that. They had some great old German dolls that were over 100 years old that the price they were asking was the correct value, but this one was the only one they had that was more modern, vintage, and they weren't asking that much for it. So I said, I'll go ahead and take that one if it doesn't sell. Lucky for me, Shirley did not sell. Maybe she wanted to come live with me. And so I got her, and she arrived here while I was on my way back from Memphis the weekend before last. And so I don't know anything about it.
I'm going to interrupt you 1 second because you
Okay.
left a cliffhanger from last week because you left Memphis and you left some valuable items in the room. Did you ever get any good news on that?
Not on the items, but I do. There are 2 of those autographs that are going to be replaced. So that's.
I told you.
Well, I already had planned on contacting Joe Bob and Darcy because I knew they'd be the easiest to.
Yeah, well, they came through.
So.
Can I have a jalapeno? Can you say jalapeno?
Jalapeno.
Yeah, I don't say hallelujah. I say jalapeno.
Jalapeno. I say hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Can I get an amen, brother?
Hallelujah, jalapeno.
All right. Thanks for the
update. All right. So we'll go ahead and start the spirit box here. I've already shared the link. I was spot on tonight, so I don't have to hold anything up tonight. And I got the spirit box here. No, we don't want necrophonic. We want Vox. Ghost Tube Vox. Here we go. Let me turn this booger up here. I love this because it doesn't have static. It just has the voices come through. So I have the Vox on. We have the Shirley here. Prior to logging on for the show, I already instructed her on, or if there's any spirit with her, about the cat ball, which we have there, that she can touch by lighting up. Or she can, I said that backwards. She can light it up by touching it. She can touch and light it up. And then we have the old hotel bell she can play with if she wants to. And even though you don't hear it yet, the ghost tube is on. So this is Kevin. This is Kevin speaking. Is there anybody here with me? Is there any spirit with this doll? Oh, that was loud and clear. Hello. What is your name?
How many transfers?
Okay, that sounded like a New York accent. Something said, how many transfers? If I heard that correctly. Are you from New York? What part of New York are you from? Not quite understanding that, but that sure sounds like an interesting response. Did this Shirley Temple doll belong to you? Is it me, or I was just looking at the screen? It looked like the doll winked. Maybe it's just my eyes playing tricks on me, but I could swear I saw her left eye move. It would be on our right, but it's her left eye. Maybe it's just the light, because the way the shadow is right next to her eye there. Is Shirley Temple herself with this doll? If you're here, can you please ring the bell for us? Got this nice fancy hotel bell here. I bet they have bells like this in New York. Please ring the bell for us if you can. Oh, that was a response. If you can't do that, if you have enough energy to just touch that ball sitting next to the doll there, you can make it light up with all kinds of pretty colors. Catherine said she was getting a 40s hotel. Did you used to live in a hotel? Or did you work in a hotel? What was the name of the hotel? She looks so creepy yet adorable in this light. Did this doll belong to you? If it's okay for me to ask, how old are you? I thought I got the numbers 27 and 37 in my head. I don't know why. Are you 27? It's like Catherine popped up, but she's muted. In my head, I don't know why. Are you 37? Are you 27? It's like Catherine popped up, but she's muted.
I keep getting 6, almost 7.
6, almost 7.
Uh-huh.
So we have a little girl here. Did they say she's a coward?
Hold on, let me get back. Let me get to it.
So we have a little girl here. Did they say she's a coward?
I'll rewind it.
Did they say she's a coward?
Hold on, I didn't get quite enough.
So Catherine popped up, but she's muted.
Too far back. It's hard to do when you're live.
Yeah.
Because the line keeps getting longer.
So Playful Rain joined us. Hey, Playful Rain.
Okay.
6, almost 7.
Uh-huh.
So we have a little girl here. Did they say she's a coward?
I don't know. What do you guys think? Hello, Playful Rain.
Playful Rain, we're doing a spirit box here with this, using the ghost tube, so it's very quiet. It just gives the voices, not the static. But had a Shirley Temple doll here that came from an estate sale in Virginia. Now, to the person that said coward, why are you calling her a coward?
This time?
I didn't quite make it out. Is she just kind of scared? Maybe she's shy and hiding from us. Playful Rain says the doll is amazing. Thank you. She has those pink eyes.
And when you told me to go back and look if she winked, I swear she did.
She did. And look, I mean, I looked over just in time to see that left eye there. Just it looked like it flashed or something. It looked like it was a wink. So I guess I wasn't seeing things.
No, because I get to watch it anytime I want to.
Yeah.
That's the joy of being on live.
Was there anything else you'd like to tell us on the ghost tube? We'd still love for you to ring the bell or touch that little ball down there and make it light up all pretty.
It's okay to do it.
Yeah, it's okay. Don't have to be shy. The spirit box got quiet.
She's being shy.
Oh, it said something, but it was kind of a low male voice. It was kind of a low male.
I swear she did.
That. Okay, who's speaking now? Who is the man who's speaking?
It said, "Go with me."
Well, where are you going? Are you asking the little girl to go with you? What is the little girl's name?
Things in it.
Well, we're getting some voices. Does this doll belong to the little girl?
No, her auntie.
Her auntie? What's your auntie's name?
Holy Truth.
Holy Truth, huh? That's what I thought it said. I heard holy, and I wasn't quite sure that last word. Does that mean you like to go? Did you like to go to church?
I'm thinking it's a slang thing.
A slang thing?
Yeah, thinking it's more of that.
I've never heard of slang holy truth before. Are you still here? Oh, I heard you start to say something.
Also function.
Yeah. Still here. What would you like to tell us? We still got a couple of minutes. If there's anything you'd like to tell us, just get close to this device in my hand and it'll, when you speak, I can hear you through it. We got New York earlier. Did you live your whole life in New York? I have a buddy up there that lives in the Bronx. What do you like about New York? I thought I heard fool and another voice say nothing.
I thought it said skull.
School. Oh, okay. Do you like it here in your new home? What do you think about my cat that keeps hopping up on my desk and my lap during the day when I'm trying to work? I'm happy she's left your doll alone and not tried to chew on it. Well, one last time, can you please try to ring the bell or touch the little ball there and light it up? See, like I showed you earlier, you just tap it. Oops. Oh, somebody said something. There we go. You just tap it like that. See all those pretty colors that come up there when you tap it?
She said like that.
Like that. Oh, well, can you tap it? Make all those pretty colors. Oh, did you see that? She did it. Thank you so much. And see all those pretty colors that come up there.
She had to get her courage up.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Wow, and on camera this time. Was it last week or week before? No, it was a week before. The spirit box or the cat ball didn't go off at all on camera. As soon as I move the camera, it just starts going off back to back.
That was my bell.
That was your bell?
I asked her earlier if she could ring a bell.
Oh, yeah. Good job. I thought it was going to be this one, but that was through the spirit box. Wow.
They don't always come through the way we want them to.
Yeah, I know. Thank you. It was the bell, and we got the ball. So you did everything. Thank you so much.
That cute little smile of hers.
I know.
She was my favorite actress as a child.
The Shirley Temple. She loved to sing and dance. Of course, probably behind the scenes, they probably wore her out. Poor little girl.
Yeah, they didn't have the laws they do now.
Yeah. They probably worked that little thing to death. No telling what kind of stress she went through. It's lucky she didn't get into drugs and alcohol, as far as I know.
She became an ambassador to what country?
I can't remember. Well, thank you to whoever's here with Shirley. I'm going to go ahead and turn this box off so we can move on with our stories. And I thank you for speaking to us and giving us
ambassador to Ghana.
Yeah.
There you go.
And thank you for the bell noise and the ball lighting up. And we're going to turn this off. I'm going to count down from 5. So if there's any ghosts or spirits that don't belong here, please be sure to move back or go to where you came from. I'm going to go ahead and close this door at the count of 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Goodbye.
Buenas noches.
Uh-oh. There we go.
Very good. Some interesting things happened with old Shirley.
Yeah, you got the bell noise of the spirit box, got the ball lighting up, got several voices. One of them had a New York accent.
New York accent.
Yeah.
What's about two guys? You guys picking on us, huh? What's your problem?
That was a successful spirit box.
Spirit box session here at Abnormal Alabama, myhaunteddogs.com, and Catherine Marie Catherine. And welcome to another Really Big Shoe.
Hello, everyone.
A really big shoe. We took a shoe off of Catherine, and it was a really big shoe.
Yeah.
I'm going to hit him one day. One day I'm going to use it and I'm going to hit him. And I'm going to video it. It's going to be the biggest blown up video ever.
You've heard of Bigfoot. I'd like to welcome to the show tonight, Miss Big Feet.
Big Feet.
All right. So we've got, and I want to take a moment to talk about this for one second. Next Tuesday night, we got special guests, Don and Celeste, Team Peak, and they have been all over the country having phenomenal experiences looking for things like the Bigfoot, talking about Bigfoot, and they've captured all kinds of interesting sounds. And one of the stories that got my attention is they kind of think they might have bumped into a portal of some sort, some dimensional shift. They were pretty shaken up over this because, well, I'm going to let them tell the story. Join us for that special 2 hours. Be very exciting to talk to Donna Celeste of Team Peak because um, they've been around a little bit and they've got a bunch of very, very interesting stories. So that is next week, and we'll be talking with them for a solid 2 hours. You won't have to tolerate us for 2 hours alone.
Nope, we'll just let them do the whole thing. No,
We're just gonna hang up and let them talk.
whole 2 hours.
Kevin couldn't handle it. He couldn't.
Nah.
So I guess I'm telling you that because this special guest probably will not do a spirit box session with Doll next week. So
No.
but just in case something happens, have one standing by.
Okay.
You know how this stuff. You know how this stuff goes, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, how many of you paranormal people out there have heard of poltergeist? I'm sure you have. You heard of poltergeist?
Me. Yes, I've heard of poltergeist.
Well, they're defined as a ghost or some supernatural being that is responsible for physical disturbances such as loud noises and objects thrown around. You've seen some of these little clips on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and whatnot of people catching stuff going haywire in the kitchen, kitchen drawers opening and closing, and dishes flying off the counter and all that kind of stuff. Well, that kind of a haunting or ghost is referred to as a poltergeist. They're my understanding is that they're harmless to people, but they are terrible to your property.
Yes.
They can wreak havoc. And Playful Rain says, yes, she's heard of poltergeist. I'm sure that anybody who's been around any kind of paranormal research probably has. So I'm hoping that Kevin has dedicated some of his time, since it was his idea to talk about this subject. You have those stories?
Yeah, I got a little more information on what people think they might be, and
Okay. Well, and it
some
is
stories, some famous historical stories, and
hysterical.
including the one that inspired the movie Poltergeist back in 1982. So poltergeists. The term poltergeist, I think you might have just said this comes from the combining of two German words, poltern, which means crash, and Geist, which means spirit or ghost. So, in other words, a noisy or an unruly ghost or spirit, like we said.
What does it? What if it's like a cabin and it does the same thing as a poltergeist does? What do you do it? What do you call it? A cabin geist?
Ah, yeah. Or we can Beetlejuice. That was my.
So, have you located some stories for us?
Yes, but some parapsychologists view poltergeist as a type of ghost or supernatural entity, which are responsible for psychological and physical disturbance. Others believe such activity originates from unknown energy associated with a living person or a location. Skeptics, on the other hand, prefer mundane explanations such as attention seeking, pranks, and trickery.
Sounds just like Kevin.
Here's another one that says another thing sounds just like me. Poltergeists tend to prefer women to men.
No, that don't sound like Kevin.
A person-focused poltergeist tends to, but not always, involve a female adolescent. I've heard this several times.
Yeah, see, Kevin likes dolls. He don't like real women. He collects dolls.
Who is suffering from a female adolescent who is suffering from emotional turmoil when the activity begins.
That sounds like Kevin's dolls.
That said, however, Not all so-called focal agents are teenagers. William G. Roll, a pioneer in poltergeist research, found the age of people reporting experiences of poltergeist activity range from 8 years old to 78.
A
So
78-year-old girl.
So they don't discriminate against age, ageism, whatever you call it.
So what's your oldest doll?
My oldest doll is from the it's 1890s German doll.
Mm-hmm.
Sitting in
So
there.
over 100 years old.
Yes.
So you need to update them on this age thing.
In 19, let's see, some of the best poltergeists are thought to be fakes. In 1967, at a lawyer's office in Rosenheim, Germany, strange things started to happen in the presence of the 19-year-old secretary Anne-Marie Schaberl. Paintings and overhead light fittings started swinging, while fluorescent tubes unscrewed themselves, and
that was swinging and screwing.
the overhead light fittings were swinging, while
okay.
fluorescent tubes were unscrewed. They unscrewed themselves, and massive spikes in electrical activity occurred.
Okay.
The speaking clock was also called multiple times per minute, and furniture was moved.
Gosh.
The police, utility company officials,
Mm-hmm.
physicist, and parapsychologist Hans Bender investigated without explanation, but many believe it was fake, all due to hidden nylon threads, especially given that the incident stopped when Schaberl left the firm in early 1968. And let's see. Some believe emotional stress can cause activity. Some ghost hunters and paranormals propose that poltergeists are actually the emotions of troubled individuals built up during times of stress. This theory, known as spontaneous recurring psychokinesis, suggests that this built up stress then unconsciously projects outwards in the form of mental energy, which affects the physical environment and produces the phenomena attributed to poltergeists. But there is little evidence to support this notion. There have been a lot of cases such as the Enfield haunting and several in America that evolved around, like we mentioned earlier, an adolescent girl. And they're saying that the emotional stress they go through with the early PMS and all these other things, the changes of life in those young years, can cause that energy that builds up into poltergeist activity. That's been a theory for at least a few decades now. Others believe they are spirits of the dead. Many people believe spirits of the dead are responsible for poltergeist activity. This is said because people who experience them perceive an underlying intelligence and meaningful communication with an otherworldly being. This view proposes that a disembodied consciousness or soul survives bodily death, but again, there also isn't any compelling scientific evidence to support this view either. So let's get down to some stories here.
Get down on it.
Some, common information about poltergeist. Let's see. I want to start with this one because one of my favorite movies back in the 80s, and still I like to watch it, is the Poltergeist movie. And I want to read the one, if I can find it here, that here we go.
What?
I started to say should be, but I said, there it is. I thought it should be linked there in my same page. Here it is. The terrifying true story that inspired Poltergeist. Now, that's that 1982 Steven Spielberg, Tobe Hooper movie where little Carol Ann is sucked into the television. And
little Carol.
It turns out that their house in the neighborhood is built on top of a cemetery where they only move the headstones, not the bodies. And now the dead are pissed. So they're here. That was the famous line of the movie. We all know that line. It's one of the spookiest and most famous in all of horror. It's from the film Poltergeist and comes from Carol Ann Freeling, played by Heather O'Rourke, R.I.P. Heather, who was young and blonde and cherubic, which makes it all the more terrifying. Though they say little kids are creepy in movies too.
Little
The
kids are creepy. Anyway.
the they that she's referring to are ghosts who've come into her suburban house through a portal, and with them has come something known as the Beast, a dark presence that will eventually snatch Carol Ann through her bedroom closet and take her into another dimension where her family can only hear her through the television. But before all of that happens, the Freeling home experiences paranormal activity that one can liken to the poltergeists of the film's title. Poltergeists are known as noisy spirits prone to physical disturbances, raps on the wall, bent spoons, moving furniture. There have been thousands of real-life reported cases of poltergeist activity around the world, and one such case loosely inspired the film Poltergeist. So here's the story of the Harriman house and the terrifying things that happened there back in 1958.
Yeah.
On the evening of February 3rd, 1958, a man named James Harriman from Seaford, Long Island, New York, received a telephone call at work from his wife, Lucille. She informed him that she and her teenage children, Jimmy and Lucy, heard a series of popping sounds coming from various spots around the house.
Popping popcorn or what?
Well, let's see. When they investigated, they found uncapped bottles of several substances completely upended in many different rooms, including a vial of holy water, which spilled all over a bedroom dresser. Harriman, who was skeptical of the whole thing, advised his family to stay calm and keep the occurrences to themselves. He believed that some prankster teenagers got inside and tried to spook the family. It was important to him to keep things under control, but 5 days later, the same thing happened again. And the next day, it happened again. This time, Mr. Harriman watched in horror as bottles moved about his bathroom as if dragged by some unseen hand. This time, he called the police.
So he witnessed it.
Yes. So much for skepticism. When the police arrived, more bottles began popping throughout the home.
What do you mean popping? What are they pop?
When the top pops off,
Okay, all right, I got you. Make sure I understood.
They performed a series of tests to rule out radio transmissions or electrical disturbances, but the bottles were not warm or otherwise charged. Whatever was happening to them could not be explained with logic. On February 17, a priest came to the home to bless it. News of the activity at the Harriman house spread like wildfire and was the subject of an article in Life magazine. That's pretty big stuff. People wrote the Harrimans letters offering potential reasonable explanations, while others believed the activity to be the result of poltergeists. Whatever the case, more activity occurred, and police officers, even witnessed the moving of objects this time. To make matters all the more unusual, the Harriman house was not your typical haunted house. It was a suburban model purchased new in 1953. The Harrimans were the only people who'd ever lived there. There was nothing to indicate the unfinished business of some previous tenant. So why did this seem like an otherwise traditional haunting? That's what Dr. J.B. Rhine, director of Duke University's Parapsychology Laboratory, hoped to find out. He approached the Harrimans after about a month of the disturbances. Rhine believed that the presence of the teenage Harriman children might have attracted the poltergeist activity. Adolescents are usually present in the home where poltergeist activity takes place. He brought some of his colleagues to the house and they studied it. interviewing the family and recording some of the mysterious occurrences. That sounds like the movie Poltergeist. However, shortly after their arrival, the activity ceased. All in all, there were about 70 documented reports of unusual activities in the house between February 3rd and March 10th. The family eventually moved away. Years later, daughter Lucille appeared in a documentary titled Real Fear: The Truth Behind the Movies, which aired on the Chiller Network. I remember that channel.
The Chiller, yeah, that didn't last long though, did it?
Yeah. So, fans of the 1982 Toby Hooper directed, Steven Spielberg produced horror film Poltergeist will recognize the Harriman story. It sounds similar to what the Freeling family goes through. A young, happy family moves into a new suburban home with their children and quickly notice disturbances, noises, bent utensils, objects moving about. When the activity increases, they seek help from a local university's parapsychology department, who come to investigate the house. Eventually, fed up with the lack of resolution and the disappearance of their daughter, they seek out a psychic who helps them cleanse the house. Obviously, Poltergeist is more sensationalized than the story of the Harrimans. There are physical apparitions, Native American burial grounds, body chomping portals, and skeletons popping out of the swimming pool. The film is also said to be cursed itself because stars Dominique Dunn and Heather O'Rourke both passed away very young, and other mysterious activity was reported on set. We cannot speak truth to the curse, but it's definitely a story that follows Poltergeist more than that of the Airmans, the real people who loosely inspired the film. I never saw Poltergeist, Lucille Harriman told HuffPost Weird News around the release of the documentary she appeared in, but I felt I had my own nightmare.
You don't see a poltergeist. You experience a poltergeist.
Yeah. Yeah, that's usually how it is
Yeah.
rather called noisy ghosts.
I've never seen a poltergeist either, but I have seen poltergeist activity.
I've seen poultry, but I've never seen a poltergeist.
All right, so you've seen eggs?
I've eaten them too, and chickens.
I have felt poltergeist.
You did what to poltergeist?
I have felt them.
Only a woman could say that.
You know he's gonna say something. He's gonna have something comment to that. I felt a poltergeist.
You should just get your hands off that poltergeist, Catherine.
They're all around you.
Feeling up a poltergeist. Shame on you.
They don't mess with me. I'll just pray them away.
I will chase them away with my special anti-poltergeist.
He's chasing me away.
Okay, is that through your story? Is that it? Is it the end of this story?
I've got others. Unless you want to.
Can I share something? Or
Yeah,
is
go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just go to bed. I mean,
Oh, you go ahead. I didn't. I wasn't gonna be the only.
You didn't do the Danny poltergeist, did you?
Nope.
The 1998 Jane Fishman was a reporter with Savannah Morning News. I think we've all heard of Savannah, Georgia.
Yep, I love it.
And Jane began a series of articles about a possibly haunted antique bed.
Oh, I know this one.
In the home of Al Cobb of Savannah, Georgia, one of the most haunted places in the world.
I wanted that bed too.
Yeah, you couldn't afford it.
No, probably not.
Cobb bought the vintage late 1800s bed at an auction as a Christmas present for his then 14-year-old son, Jason, a purchase he later regretted. 3 nights later, Fishman reported, Jason told his parents he felt as if someone had planted elbows on his pillow and was watching him and breathing cold air down the back of his neck. he felt ill. The next night, he noticed the photo of his deceased grandparents on his wicker nightstand flipped down. So he righted it. The next day, the photo was facing down again. Later that morning, after leaving his room for breakfast, he returned and found in the middle of his bed 2 beanie babies,
Ooh,
the
baby.
zebra and the tiger, next to a conch shell, a dinosaur made of shells, and a plaster toucan bird. That got his parents and his twin brother Lee's attention. Trying to make sense of the irrational, Al called out, "Do we have a Casper here?" Talking about Casper the Friendly Ghost. "Tell me your name and how old you are." Then he left some line composition paper and crayons and, with his family, walked out of the room. In 15 minutes, they returned and they found written vertically in large block childlike letters, Danny 7. With his family out of the house, Al Cobb decided to continue trying to communicate with the spirit of Danny with the same kind of notes. Danny indicated that his mother had died in that very bed in 1899 and that he wanted to stay with the bed. He also made it clear that he didn't want anyone else sleeping in it. The same day, they found a note reading, "No one sleep in bed." Jason, who had moved out of the room, decided to stretch out and pretend to take a nap. That, says Al, was another huge mistake. The first mistake was getting to bed. "I doubled back in the room to pick up my clothes," remembers Jason, "when this terracotta head that had been hanging on the wall came flying through the room, just missing me before it smashed on the closet door." No one really knows, Fishman writes in her second installment, who or what is leaving the copious notes, moving the furniture, opening the kitchen drawers, setting the dining room table, flipping over the chairs, lighting the candles, arranging the posters to spell out a person's name, Jill, then hanging the finished product on the bedroom wall. Jason also spoke of other spirits. Uncle Sam, who had come to reclaim his daughter, he said was buried under the house. Gracie, a young girl whose sculpture sits in Bonaventure Cemetery, and Jill, a young woman who left a number of handwritten messages, among them one inviting the Cobbs to a party in their own living room. Parapsychologist Andrew Nichols, head of the Florida Society for Parapsychological Research, investigated this case. What happened at the Cobbs, he told Fishman, was specifically to Jason. Would have happened without Danny or the bed. It was the electromagnetic energy of the wall that Jason started sleeping next to when they moved the bed there. That charged a psychic ability that the boy already had. Interesting, that. And that is all we have on that particular case. It's referred to, if you want to look it up, the Danny Poltergeist case.
Ooh.
And now back to everyone's favorite poltergeist, Kevin.
Let's see what I got up here. I got one that I first heard about when I was a kid. Let's see, where'd my story go here? This has been around a long time. Where is this thing? Ah, here it is. This is what in history of paranormal investigating has been known as the Amherst Mystery. In 1879, Walter Hubble, an actor with an intense interest in the paranormal, published a book entitled The Haunted House, a True Ghost Story.
True.
The book was an account of the mysterious manifestations that have taken place in the presence of Esther Cox, the young girl who is possessed of devils and has become known throughout the entire Dominion as the Great Amherst Mystery, Mr. Hubble said. In the introduction, Hubble wrote, "The manifestations described in this story commenced 1 year ago. No person has yet been able to ascertain their cause." So, who exactly was Esther Cox, and what was the Great Amherst Mystery? When the mysterious manifestations described in Hubble's book began, Esther Cox was 18 and living with her married sister, Olive Teed, in Amherst, Nova Scotia, Canada. The story goes that Esther was the victim of an attempted sexual assault by a male friend. Shortly thereafter, the manifestations began. Amherst, let's see, it started with the strange sounds in the night. These were followed by seizures that rocked Esther's entire body. Then objects began to move around the house of their own volition. When the family called a doctor, he witnessed bedclothes moving by themselves and heard sounds coming from beneath the bed. Perhaps most chillingly, everyone in the room saw writing appear on the wall above Esther's bed, which read, "Esther Cox, you are mine to kill." After that, the supernatural activity grew worse. Many visitors to the home witnessed the phenomena, which continued for several months, abating only when Esther came down with diphtheria and was moved to the home of another married sister in Sackville, New Brunswick. The Cox family returned to Amherst, this time moving in with a local family, but the disturbances refused to relent. In addition to strange sounds and flying objects, spontaneous fires would appear in various places throughout the house. Esther herself claimed to now see a ghost. Quote, "There he stands, all in gray. See how his eyes are glaring at me, and he laughs when he says I must leave the house tonight, or he will start a fire in the loft under the roof and burn us all to death." Enter Walter Hubble. Hubble had heard about the case, and in the summer of 1879, he traveled to Amherst to rent a room in the same home where Esther resided. During this time, he claimed to witness objects move on their own or appear out of thin air, and fires start spontaneously. He also witnessed some of Esther's painful fits and claimed to have communicated with several spirits through rapping techniques. Such activity inspired Hubble to document his experiences. His book, released that same year, sold quite well and brought increased attention to Esther's case. Buoyed by his success, Hubble orchestrated a speaking tour with Esther as its star. The tour, however, was ill-fated. Esther faced skepticism and hostility at most of her engagements. When the heckling became too much, she returned to Amherst. Upon her return, Esther attempted to put her haunted past behind her. She found work with a local farmer until the farmer's barn burned down. The farmer accused Esther of arson, and she was sentenced to 4 months in prison, though she served only one before being released. As is the case with so many reports of demonic activity, the phenomena surrounding Esther Cox eventually faded away. She went on to live a relatively normal life after the barn incident, marrying twice and dying in 1912. Though Esther's story, and by extension Hubbell's, was dismissed by academics in the years that followed, those who witnessed the great Amherst mystery continued to attest to the otherworldly activity that took place around the young woman from Nova Scotia. Now, there's one little part they left out here. They almost hit on it that evening. One of those evenings, Hubble was there. And what was that evening where the poltergeist, whatever it was, threatened to set the house on fire? Hubble reports while sitting downstairs. And I read this in a book back in the late 1980s when I was a kid, really interested in ghost stories. And he said that as he was sitting in the room and he was trying to communicate through those raps, I think what they did was rap once for yes and twice for no. Apparently, because they weren't heeding the warning, according to Hubble, just out of nowhere, lit matches started falling from the ceiling. Little flames just raining down from the ceiling. And the family just went into panic and they ran out and got buckets of water and came running in, trying to catch the flames and put out the ones that had landed there. And this went on for, seemed like a minute or two before it finally ceased. And they had no idea where those matches just rained down from like that. It was a very scary and weird phenomena. So I wanted to add that because this article left that out. I remember in the book it had an artist conception of that room with the matches falling and somebody was rushing in the door with a bucket of water. So that's pretty crazy.
What was the name of that poltergeist?
The Amherst Mystery is the name of that story.
Yeah. So have we covered the Thornton Health poltergeist?
Nope, not yet.
Well, we're about to.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Let's get her done.
Get her done.
It was the 1970s. At Thornton Health in England, there was a family that was tormented by a poltergeist. Here's Kevin's word. Phenomena. That started one August night when they were woken in the middle of the night by a blaring bedside radio that had somehow, mysteriously, turned itself on. Turned to a foreign language station. This would be the beginning of a string of events that lasted nearly 4 years. A lampshade repeatedly was knocked to the floor by unaided hands. During the Christmas season of 1972, an ornament was hurled across the room, smashing into the husband's forehead.
Ow!
As he flopped into an armchair, reports Haunted Creighton, the Christmas tree began to shake violently. Come the new year, and there were footsteps in the bedroom when there was no one there. And one night, the couple's son awoke to find a man in old-fashioned dress staring threateningly at him. The family's fear grew when, as they entertained friends one night, there was a loud knocking at the front door. The living room door was then flung open and all the house's lights came on. Having the house blessed failed to rid the house of this phenomena.
Yeah.
Objects. You like that word, don't you? Objects flew through the air. Loud noises were heard, and the family would sometimes hear a noise that suggested some large piece of furniture had crashed to the floor. And when they went to investigate, nothing was disturbed. A medium, that's half a full, a medium who was consulted told the family that the house was haunted by a farmer of the name of Chatterton, who considered the family trespassers on his property. An investigation bore out the fact that Chatterton had indeed lived in the house in the mid-18th century. Chatterton's wife now joined in causing mayhem, and often the tenant's wife would be followed up the stairs at night by an elderly gray-haired woman wearing a pinafore and with her hair tied back in a bun. it looked at she if she looked at it, this entity would disappear into the shadows. The family even reported seeing the farmer appear on their television screens wearing a black jacket with wide pointed lapels, high necked shirt, and black cravat. After the family moved out of the house, the poltergeist activity ceased, and none have been reported by subsequent residents. And now let's go back to the infamous Kevin the Haunted Cane.
The haunted cane. I
Kevin
got
the Haunted Cane.
Here's one that's kind of unique because this poltergeist is not in a home; it's actually in a graveyard.
Do you know how to catch a unique bird?
A unique bird?
Uh-huh.
I don't know how you catch one.
Unique up on it.
Unique up on it. Okay. All right. It's a cold night in 1998, the type Edinburgh specializes in, when the frigid air seems to work its way into the very marrow of your bones. A homeless man seeks shelter for the night. He finds himself in Greyfriars Kirkyard. Aha! Look, there's a building up ahead. The man tries the door, but it's locked. But wait, what's that? He finds a hole near the back of the mausoleum. Who knows what it's for? At least it'll get him inside and under a roof. He slips inside and finds himself in the mausoleum. A staircase takes him down to the crypt. He finds the coffins of the Mackenzie family. Perhaps there are valuables in the caskets. Before he can find out, a hole opens in the floor. He drops into a chamber below, filled with centuries-old bones. Panic-stricken in the dark, the man somehow manages to clamber out of the burial pit. The legend tells that he flees the mausoleum in fright, encountering a local dog walker in the process. Except it isn't just the homeless man who leaves the mausoleum that night. According to the stories, one of Edinburgh's most vicious poltergeists begins to walk abroad as well. Let's meet the Mackenzie poltergeist. So who was George Mackenzie? He was also known as Bloody Mackenzie, and he was a judge and Lord Advocate in the 17th century. But before we can go into who he was, we need a little backstory. King James VI had argued that the king was head of the church. The Church of Scotland argued that only God could be the head of the church. This caused problems because James wanted a united church now that he ruled over both England and Scotland. It still wasn't resolved by the time King Charles I came to the throne in 1624. Thanks to his fervent belief in the divine right of kings, he ignored the wishes of the Scottish Church and introduced the Common Book of Prayer in 1637 and outlawed other forms of worship. This understandably led to riots and protests in Scotland. Charles branded anyone opposing the prayer book as a traitor. His opponents decided to create a national covenant so that it was Scotland opposing Charles, not individuals. It was signed on February 28, 1638, and those who signed it became known as the Covenanters. This declared their pledge that Scotland was loyal to the king, but it would remain a Presbyterian church. The covenant was even sanctioned by the Scottish Parliament in 1640. The First English Civil War began 2 years later, and the Covenanters supported the parliamentarians to depose Charles. Mackenzie actually began his career defending Covenanters and even got the Marquis of Argyll acquitted from a charge of treason. But he'd only taken on the defense cases to make his name. Once established, he switched sides, defending the king and the Scottish Church. Sounds like a politician. This support paid off since he became king's advocate for King Charles II in Scotland in 1677. He persecuted the Covenanters, who were now outlaws. After the Battle of Bothwell Bridge in 1679, Mackenzie imprisoned 1,200 of them in Greyfriars Kirkyard in the area now known as the Covenanters' Prison. At the time, it was an open area at the southern end of the kirkyard enclosed by the town wall. They were left in this outdoor area without food, water, or shelter, and hundreds died. Guards mistreated them, and their heads ended up on spikes along the gate. By the end of 1679, only 48 Covenanters remained. Mackenzie actually fell foul of his own enthusiasm when William of Orange came to the throne. He gave religious control back to the Presbyterians, the group that Mackenzie persecuted with such relish. Mackenzie fled Scotland for England, where he died in 1691. In a twist of irony, he was buried in Greyfriars, a mere stone's throw from the Covenanters' prison. A couple of centuries ago, John Hayes, a failed criminal, apparently hid from the law in the Black Mausoleum. He spent 6 months there, sneaking out to scavenge whenever possible. When the police finally caught him, he'd gone mad. He insisted that the coffins in the mausoleum moved every night. Apparently, he could hear Mackenzie scraping around inside his coffin. And a homeless man was not the only person to end up in the mausoleum more recently. On June 30th, 2003, 2 teenagers forced open the doors and desecrated an unidentified male corpse. One of them cut off its head and used it like a glove puppet. If you believe the reports that grew up around the story, they supposedly drank wine from the skull. The boys, who were 15 and 17, caused around 10,000 pounds worth of damage. A ghost tour guide challenged the boys after seeing them carrying something in a blanket. The guide called the police, who caught one of the boys, who returned to the graveyard with a girl who did not believe him. Authorities tried both boys under the violation of sepulchre law, originally designed for grave robbing. The mausoleum became infamous after these 2 events. The doors remain locked even now. I went right up to them on a trip to Edinburgh in 2012. It was during the day, though some experiences have also been daytime encounters, and nothing happened, but that means nothing. Since 1999, at least 140 people have collapsed. 350 documented attacks are on record. Within a week of the homeless man's incursion into the tomb, a woman felt herself blown back from the mausoleum by an icy blast of air. Jan Andrew Henderson even started the City of the Dead tour company to both investigate the sightings and speak to witnesses. The tour takes in the whole of Greyfriars Kirkyard, including the normally locked Covenanters' prison. Visitors record both hot and cold spots, inexplicable bruises, scratches, or being pushed by an unseen presence. They report having hair pulled or their limbs being grabbed. One woman was found unconscious nearby with bruises around her neck. Some people have claimed that an evil presence has followed them home to continue tormenting them elsewhere. The spiritualist medium Colin Grant attempted to lay ghosts to rest in the kirkyard in 2000. A few weeks later, he died of a heart attack. Many attribute this to the Mackenzie poltergeist. Dead animals turn up near the mausoleum with no obvious cause of death. People see white figures and hear knocking noises from beneath the ground. Strange fires, here we go with fires again. Strange fires break out in the houses surrounding the kirkyard, including that of Henderson, who lost his physical notes about the poltergeist in a house fire. Luckily, he had a digital backup elsewhere. These notes led to his book about the phenomena, which is called The Ghost That Haunted Itself. Tales of strange sightings in the kirkyard itself abound. Figures flit between headstones while spectral white birds make appearances. Yet it's difficult to link these manifestations with a poltergeist. There's even a theory that the poltergeist is also responsible for paranormal activity in the South Bridge vaults. But again, this seems a difficult link to make. So, how do we explain the lack of stories about hauntings before 1998? One theory is that Mackenzie lay dormant until disturbed by the homeless man. Now awake and presumably none too pleased about that fact, he haunts his mausoleum and the surrounding area. Surprisingly, records do show that in the 19th century, local children believed Mackenzie was restless in his tomb. They'd run up to the mausoleum at night and yell, "Bloody Mackenzie, come out if ye dare! Lift the stick and draw the bar," through the keyhole. And remember the criminal who hid in the mausoleum, insisting Mackenzie still moved around in his coffin. So there is some precedent to the idea of the Mackenzie poltergeist well before 1999. Willie Telford, a tour guide in the area, thinks that Mackenzie lurks in the area due to his conscience. Perhaps he feels remorse for his treatment of the Covenanters. This could certainly explain why activity seems to center around a tomb in the Covenanters' prison, not the Mackenzie mausoleum. Another theory involves the hysterical energy on the night in 1998, which has been fed by visitors to the site. In this explanation, the continuing hysteria keeps the manifestation going. When I did a City of the Dead tour in December 2016, the tour guide offered pheromones as an example. Say you gather a party of already anxious people into a confined space like the Covenanters' prison. The pheromones excreted by this group can influence each other, thus spreading mass panic. Others think that the pheromones released by those imprisoned in the Covenanters' prison have somehow imprinted on the area. Every time visitors swing by for a tour, the pheromones reactivate, and we experience poltergeist activity. My problem with this idea is that I'm not sure you could reactivate them after 300 years, not to mention the fact that the disturbed grave was several yards away. Different theories attempt to explain the Mackenzie poltergeist: mass hysteria, pheromones, overactive imaginations, electromagnetic radiation from nearby machinery, and even geology all play a role. Any of these explanations, or all of them, could be correct. That said, it's difficult to argue with the sheer volume of reports in a relatively short time period. Furthermore, given the number of reports that involve physical assaults, like people suddenly being knocked down or collapsing, it's hard to work out how geology could cause scratches to erupt on a person's body. And of course, there's another possibility. Perhaps the Mackenzie poltergeist really does roam the grounds of Greyfriars Kirkyard. I'll say one thing about this cemetery: when people visit, all they got to do is or all the cemetery has to do is somebody trips and falls and say, it's the poltergeist, go sue. It's his fault.
We are now going into an hour and a half of this live stream. And for those that weren't at the beginning, I do want to share this real quick, if I may, and then I want you to go ahead and promote your books and whatnot for a moment.
Okay.
This couple here is Don and Celeste, and they call them Team Peak because it's he and his wife. They are a team, so it's Team Peak. And I want to share the bio to entice people to tune in next week because they're going to be a special guest.
Oh,
Don and Celeste. Wilderness Adventures fame is where they are best known, and Don was a 3-time Kentucky Master Angler Award recipient and has gained a lot of fame from that. But they are also full-time Bigfoot and cryptid researchers. not just hobbyists. They travel to Bigfoot tribal and habitat locations. They photograph and video the evidence they find, and they post those findings. And they travel across the country and explore beautiful, rugged, and vast wilderness areas as they research for more Bigfoot and other cryptid beings. And they do this together as a team. And what caught my attention, besides all that I wanted clearly to interview this couple, is recently, and they shared this on July the 12th, which was just a few days ago. They said another first for Team Peak, and by far the strangest, a rift, a portal, dimensional shift, shaken to the core.
Ooh.
Got nauseated, sharp pain in the head just before the incident. Their son found graffiti written different ways with only one word, alone. So we got to look forward to hearing that story, don't we? That is our special guest for 2 hours next week. Join us. And now I'll let Kevin talk about some of his work.
Yeah. My work. Let's say her. To view my work, you can just simply go to myhauntedDolls.com and shop. Don't drop. I'd rather you shop. Got plenty of books out there. We've got the true stories of my haunted items here, and my haunted collection is the first book, and then this is the sequel book right here on the screen. My Haunted Collection, The Dark Side, that tells about the more terrifying items. And I have some nonfiction ghost books and some fiction, supernatural fiction, like Crimson the Blood Painting, although that's based on an actual haunted painting. And my most recent book, which is where'd it go? Hey, come here. There it is. Dark Awakening and Other Tales for a Midnight Hour, which is a collection of my original short horror and supernatural stories.
Horror.
That's the first book I've had in hardback, so I'm pretty proud of that.
Hardback or hardhead?
And so, and I'm already 70 pages into the next book, which is going to be an inspirational book this time.
And I'm sure that was going to be a horror story because he had a horror experience at a Hampton Inn in Tennessee.
Hampton
Inn. That had to be a poltergeist. You wouldn't have never done that on purpose. That was a poltergeist.
Oh, you're talking about the Memphis Hilton.
Oh, the Hilton. I'm sorry.
Hilton.
The Hilton, yeah.
They had a damn good breakfast buffet and a good lunch buffet at the convention.
I think there was a haunting in there that took that away.
Yeah, it was some weird stuff. I got good stuff on my video that I shot there that night.
Kevin indeed is a prolific author of all those books. You can go to myhauntedDolls.com. There he is with the Raggedy Ann doll. And so I usually talk about very briefly Dating the Dead, the book I put together, datingthedead.com. But I just had this shared by a fan up in Blount County that's wearing a shirt that advertises one of my other books.
Oh,
right there. Live in Peace, Lip. It also says abnormalalabama.com.
Well.
But, I do have a book on Amazon called LIP. Normally when somebody dies, we say rest in peace, RIP. And I wrote a book said, no, we should live in peace. Right? Okay. So thank you for sharing that photo of your sexy little self up there in Blount County. Thank you very much. So I guess Kevin's got some more to talk to us about, I hope.
Yeah, let's see. I've got a couple of them. There's one I thought you might hit on since you were reading from that. There's one about the infield poltergeist. Did you want to take that one, or you want me to go ahead and?
The infield? I thought you just did that.
No, that was the one in Scotland.
So you did not do it.
I had not done the infield poltergeist case.
Okay, well, let me do one if you don't mind.
Okay.
But I was going to do another one. You can keep that in your on your screen there because I was going to do the Alma Fielding case.
Oh. Okay.
haunting of Alma Fielding. Is it okay?
Yep.
As that continues?
Yes.
The year was 1938. Alma Fielding was 38-year-old, and she was a housewife in Thornton Heath, a suburb of London. She went to the press complaining of a poltergeist having invaded her home. A 6-fingered handprint appeared on a mirror. Glasses flew through the bedroom she shared with her husband, Les. Their son, Don, had to dodge a pot of face cream when he came to investigate the commotion. And coins pinged across the room at the lodger. George, when he did the same. Knowing the police wouldn't take any of this very seriously, Fielding called the Sunday Pictorial, which had invited readers to share their experiences with the supernatural. Nandor Fodor, an investigator for the International Institute of Psychical Research, learned about the event through a clergyman pal. He knew that he must act quickly, Summerscale writes. The International Institute was one of the several psychical research bodies in London, and other ghost hunters would be sure to take an interest in this haunting. Not to mention that he had recently been accused in the psychical press of being cynical about the supernatural and unkind to mediums. And he had sued for libel. But in order to amass evidence in his defense and prove that he was a sincere believer in spiritualism and psychic phenomena, he needed to find and champion a real medium or psychic event. Alma Fielding, he thought, might just be the genuine article. Over the next several months, he investigated the phenomena and her relationship to it, as it was clear from the get-go that she was its focus. But haunting isn't just the narrative of Fodor's investigation of Fielding. It's also a narrative about women and power, about anxiety of the unknown and fear of looming war, about the choices people make, consciously or unconsciously, in order to escape certain aspects of their lives. Many Britons have turned to spiritualism in the 1920s because of the losses of war, Summerscale writes, and many were turning to it now for fear of conflict to come. Spiritualist seances offered a sense of wonder and intimacy rarely found in the Church of England. At the same time, of course, as you might expect, supernatural swindles abounded. The futurity racket the Reynolds News observed was typical of societies on the brink of chaos and destruction. The Italian magician Count Cagliostro flourished in Paris before the Revolution of 1789, much as the faith healer Grigory Rasputin thrived in St. Petersburg before 1917. Fielding, whose husband Les woke up with nightmares from his participation in the Great War, had her first appearance in the pictorial run right next to a large photograph of Adolf Hitler. Fodor, whom she spent so much time with in the next few months, was a Jewish Hungarian immigrant who was well aware of the rising anti-Semitic tide all over Europe. Talk about fear-inducing times for all involved. Alma Fielding's experience both was and led to a haunting. She frequented the International Institute for the Psychical Research's headquarters for seances and experiments. She habitually appeared to manifest objects and even living beings like white mice. And she and Fodor certainly had at times disquieting or harmful effects on one another, even as he tried to understand her through the lens of past traumas, which were disquieting and harmful too. Was there a spirit, a ghost, something supernatural involved at all? It depends on how you look at it, what you decide to believe, and how fully you can hold more than one truth in your mind at the same time. Summerscale's writing is so inviting, the historical details folded into the narrative so well, that The Haunting of Alma Fielding reads like a novel you don't want to put down. The book design is also superb, the typeface somehow evoking something old and mysterious while also being easy on the eyes. Best of all, it offers a variety of possibilities without definitely handing on landing on one single answer. The book recognizes that sometimes the answer to the question, was it real or was it fake, is simply yes. So that is really about a talking about a book that was written, The Haunting of Alma Fielding, and you don't have to buy the book. I think you can find it in online in digital form, an ebook, or maybe just a PDF writing. It's called, and it should be a very interesting read, The Haunting of Alma Fielding.
Ooh. All right, I've got one of the more famous ones. In fact, this story was revived before the pandemic when The Conjuring 2 came out because it focused on this story, the Enfield Poltergeist case. Another English ghost, this one in Enfield in North London, made headlines in 1977. The strange activity seemed to center around the daughter of Peggy Harper, a divorcee in her mid 40s. Again, it started on an August night. Late at night, Janet, who was aged 11, and her brother Pete, aged 10, complained that their beds were jolting up and down and going all funny. As soon as Mrs. Harper got to the room, the movements had stopped. As far as she was concerned, her kids were making it all up. But things got progressively more bizarre from there. Shuffling noises and knocks on the wall were followed by a heavy chest of drawers sliding by itself across the floor. Mistress Harper promptly got her children out of the house and sought the assistance of a neighbor. The neighbor searched the house and garden but found no one. Soon they also heard the knocks on the walls, which continued at spaced out intervals. At 11 p.m., they called the police, who heard the knocks as well. One officer even saw a chair inexplicably move across the floor and later signed a written statement to confirm the events. Several people were witness to the events that occurred in the following days. Lego bricks and marbles were thrown around the house and were often hot to the touch when someone tried to pick them up. In September of that year, Maurice Gross of the Society for Psychical Research came to investigate. Gross claims that he experienced the strange happenings. First, a marble was thrown at him from an unseen hand. He saw doors open and close by themselves, and he claimed to feel a sudden breeze that seemed to move up from his feet to his head. Gross was later joined in the investigation by writer Guy Lyon Playfair, and together they studied the case for 2 years. The knocking on walls and floors became an almost nightly occurrence. Furniture slid across the floor and was thrown down the stairs. Drawers were wrenched out of dressing tables. Toys and other objects would fly across the room. Bedclothes would be pulled off. Water was found in mysterious puddles on the floors. There were outbreaks of fire, followed by their inexplicable extinguishing. There we go with fire again. There seems like wherever there's a poltergeist, there's fire. The case became decidedly unnerving when the spirits revealed themselves through Janet. Speaking in a deep, gravelly voice, the spirit announced that his name was Bill and that he died in the house, a fact that has been verified. The voices and the phenomenon have been recorded on tape and film, and Playfair has written a book about the case called This House is Haunted. Despite the documentation, however, much controversy surrounds the case. Skeptics claim that the case is nothing more than the work of a very clever and mischievous girl, Janet. The poltergeist activity always stopped when she was watched closely, and when she was taken to a hospital for several days to be tested for physical or mental abnormality, the phenomena ceased in the house. Some researchers believe that Janet taught herself to speak in the strange male voice and that photos of her levitating in her bedroom merely caught her jumping off the bed. Was this poltergeist case just the result of an attention-seeking 11-year-old? Now, we got the photo out there, which you can probably Google, of her supposedly levitating. If I can pull it up here. I wasn't sure I was going to get to this story, but
So did you cover it while you're looking for that? Did you cover in detail all the activity that happened? I know you kind of touched on it, but did you go into detail about all the activity surrounding the making of that Poltergeist movie?
early in the first story I shared was the story behind the Poltergeist movie. Yeah,
Okay, so that went into detail with it. Okay.
yeah. And I'm about to pull up this photo of Janet levitating in her bedroom. I'm just getting it up here on the. Here we go on our list of photos here. And here's the photo of the infield haunting subject, Janet, supposedly levitating off of her bed. Of course, a lot of skeptics claim that she's just jumping and they took a picture. She looks very panicked there, so I guess it's
Well,
up
it
to you to
does, but
decide.
I'm telling you, there's more than one reason that it looks like she just got caught jumping up in the air. And I'll explain, of course, the overall picture. She's not that far up off the ground to begin with. That's one
No.
thing. Her entire body position. But then you look right under her chin and you see the two red strings that's coming from her little nightie.
Yeah.
They're flying up in the air. That would indicate a jump. If you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, that would. So
Yeah. So that's my debunking of that. I'm sorry.
wow, physics, science, the little straps are.
Yeah.
I mean, I always was kind of skeptical about that photo too. It just looks like she's taking a leap off the bed and she's in midair when the picture is snapped. But I didn't want to just completely throw out the. It could be that it started out an actual haunting and they may have elevated it with their own fakery to get attention. I don't know, but yeah, that picture I've always been definitely skeptical of. All right. So now what? I got another one up here, but I don't know if
But
you got
go for it. We've got about how many minutes left in this show?
19
20
minutes.
19, 20 minutes. So fill her up, boy. Fill her
I
up.
got one here in America, up in Indianapolis, the famous Indianapolis Poltergeist. Not the Indianapolis Raceway, but the Indianapolis Poltergeist. In 1962, Indianapolis was the epitome of the conservative Midwestern, Bible Belt, medium-sized city. The new city-county building had just been opened. Unigov was not even on the map, and the citizens liked things quiet and reasonable. 3 women were residing in a house on North Delaware Street in 1962. On March 11th, the start of a chain of events occurred in the house that were so extraordinary that they made national news and gave the city some unwanted attention. 32-year-old Renata Beck was the head of the household. Her 13-year-old daughter Linda lived with her, as did Mrs. Beck's 61-year-old mother, Lena Jamaica. Mrs. Beck was a divorcee from Vienna, Austria. Her ex-husband had been a U.S. embassy officer in Vienna, Mrs. Beck was well educated and spoke fluent English. Mrs. Jamaica was a wealthy widow whose late husband had published a newspaper in Germany. She had come to Indianapolis in 1959 after her husband's death to live with her daughter. Linda was described as very shy and very quiet. That's the 13-year-old daughter. The women did not get along well. Mistress Jamaica was a strong-willed woman who was very critical of everything and was used to getting her way. She disliked Americans and felt her granddaughter was not being properly raised. Neighbors claimed that angry yelling often came from the house. Shortly after 10 p.m. on March 11th, the women saw a glass rise out of the kitchen sink of its own accord and fly across the room of its own accord. It landed behind a flower pot. They did not know what to think of it. At 10:37, they heard a crash upstairs. Investigating it, they found a large piece of German crystal had fallen off a bookcase and shattered. After 11 p.m., a glass ashtray flew across the living room and broke. The ladies left the house and checked into a hotel for the rest of the night. They returned the next day, but almost immediately the phenomenon started up again. Glasses and crockery started flying and breaking in the kitchen. A cup nearly hit Mrs. Jamaica. The police were called. Over the next 2 weeks, the police came back several times to try to find out what was causing the disturbances. On March 12th, the Indianapolis PD Officer Ray Patton was walking through the house with Mrs. Beck observing the damage. They went into an upstairs bedroom, and as they were walking out of the empty room, a glass hit Officer Patton in the back with such force that it left a bruise. Officer Patton could not explain the incident. A paranormal investigator was called in and claimed to have been hit by a glass thrown by an invisible hand. Mrs. Beck's purse disappeared. The lady had recently opened a restaurant, and the purse contained $125 of operating money. The ladies, the police, and even reporters scoured the house looking for the purse. Another distinct phenomenon occurred when bite marks started appearing on both Mrs. Beck and Mrs. Jamaica. They were painful puncture wounds that appeared on the arms, necks, and throats of both women. A doctor examining them said the marks resembled the bite marks of a bat. As a police officer was interviewing Mrs. Jamaica, he saw her grab her throat. When he looked at her throat, there were 2 new puncture marks. By March 22nd, the incidents had peaked and then subsided. The house was a wreck with broken glass and mirrors littering the floors, chips in the plaster and dents in the woodwork where objects had hit them. On March 25th, Mrs. Beck's purse showed up in a rather obvious place. The purse contained only $35 of the $125 she originally had. On March 26, neighbors called police back to the house. They found Mrs. Jamaica passed out in the living room floor. One of the officers said that he later observed Mrs. Jamaica throw a glass against the wall and kick over a piano stool. Mrs. Jamaica was arrested on a charge of disorderly conduct and, despite Mrs. Beck's objections, had to spend the night in jail. At Lena Jamaica's hearing, a Marion County judge told her he would waive a psychiatric examination and release her if she would agree to go back to Germany within 10 days. She agreed and returned to her native land. The police and the newspapers claimed that Mrs. Jamaica had been the cause of the disturbances all along. A police psychologist named Francis Dix spent 90 minutes with the women. He said the three of them sit together and not leave his sight. He said nothing happened. He said that it was only if one of the women left that the breaking glass and other destructive activities occurred, and as far as the police were concerned, the mystery had been solved and the case was closed. The news media was satisfied that the incidents were caused by one or more of the women and moved on to other stories. A family friend, Emil Nosada, said that he and his wife came to support Mrs. Beck while the incidents were occurring. He said he and his wife witnessed things that Mistress Jamaica could not have possibly caused. The paranormal investigator made the same observation and also asked how the bite marks could be explained. The incidents halted before Mistress Jamaica left. After she was gone, there were no further reports of any disturbances. Just a thought-provoking note. The word poltergeist is German for noisy ghost. The first reported poltergeist was in Germany in 856 AD. So her being German is quite the coincidence.
What the coincidence?
Yeah, looks like Emma has showed up.
Yes, welcome everybody to this big show tonight. And make sure you tune in next week because we have 2 hours of special guests who have traveled all over the countryside.
All over.
And they have caught many exciting and interesting things regarding cryptids and Bigfoot. And recently, just a few days ago, they shared a story that they're going to share with us in more detail regarding what was it? I mean, it was strange. It was like a time slip. It made them get nauseated, made them get sick. And then the story involves a son, and it involves strange writings. And on I don't think in a cave, but I think it was on stone rock out in the wilderness. And they're written over and over the word alone. So was it a time slip? Was it a portal? We're going to talk to Don and Celeste of Team Peak next week. Join us. And if you have questions, come to the chat box there and just chat away and ask questions, and we'll direct those questions to these very lovely couple.
You made me think of Roanoke when that colony disappeared and they found the word Roanoke scratched or etched into the trees and everything.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Something hypothesized that there was a large portal they got sucked into there.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I wish that I'd get sucked into one, but
well, that's the big East Coast one. The West Coast, they've got the Queen Mary's got a big portal in the first class pool if you want to get sucked in there.
yeah.
I wouldn't jump in though. The pool's empty.
So we're working. We got about 10 minutes left in the show, and I'm sure that Kevin has some more. We've been sharing poltergeist stories in the first 30 minutes, as usual. Kevin had Shirley Temple on, and if you came late and you haven't seen that, rewind it when we end this here in about 10 minutes. Go back to the beginning because Shirley Temple had a few things to say, and she activated some things there in Kevin's house. And in fact, if I was Kevin, I'd probably sleep with one eye open tonight.
One eye open, like Popeye. Okay.
I don't have my pipe though. Where's my pipe and my can of spinach?
Oh shit! The Queen Mary is closed. I had not heard that.
The ship, the Queen Mary, they closed it.
I thought it was still open for tours and everything.
I don't know. I've been there. Have you been over there? Yeah, years ago. I
went there 2006. I went there and I got a ghost photo in the hallway there.
I was there in the 70s or 80s.
Oh,
way back.
My granddaddy,
probably before you were born.
My granddaddy on my mother's side, he came back from World War II on the Queen Mary, and he carved his initials in the deck somewhere. I would have known where to find it. But.
Well, I didn't go for a ghost hunt, but I did go there. And also at that time, the Spruce Goose, which was Howard Hughes' wooden airplane, was also lodged very closely to the Queen Mary. Now they've moved the Spruce Goose somewhere else. But I got to tour both those. I had read in my younger years a lot of books about Howard Hughes. He was a fascinating character, and I really dug into his life a bit. In fact, he, of course, died during my lifetime. But anyway,
Yeah.
thanks for sharing that the
And,
Queen Mary is now closed, no longer
yes.
open for tours.
Well, it says the Queen Mary Hotel is temporarily closed. The tours are temporarily suspended until further notice. So we'll see.
Because they had a money. Because
They
had
might be doing maintenance on it. That
they
you
could be cleaning a propeller or something.
know.
Maybe
They closed it because they couldn't afford. Whoops.
well,
They had a lot of
maybe
people.
well, they just told you that, but
Yeah,
maybe
a lot of
that's what
people.
they're putting out there. But I think that they're having a cleansing of getting ghosts out of there. I don't know.
Yeah.
Get her
I don't
down.
know. They had a lot of people swarming that place, and they had
Oh,
at Halloween, they'd
like I
have
said,
the ghost thing.
I was out there before most of you guys were even born. It was already there, and it was busy. And I've never noticed or heard of a time when they weren't. Now maybe COVID hurt them real bad. I don't know.
Could be.
I heard a lot of restaurants and whatnot.
It
So,
says it's temporary, so that means they should come back sometime in the future.
well, we will give them thoughts and prayers.
Yeah. My book, Into the what was it called? Into the Vortex is
Into the
based
morning.
on the Queen Mary. So get that book. It's the sequel to my novel Haunts.
Get it. Kevin, do you have another story you can share with us in the last few minutes of this really big
Yeah.
show?
Here's kind of a short one. I'm going to butcher this name, but this comes from a city in Brazil in South America.
Brazil.
Called Jabata. Jabata. I'm just going to pronounce it Jabatical. An infamous true poltergeist story came out of Jabatical, Brazil, and it's that of Maria, who was subject to a poltergeist attack back in the 1960s.
Mm.
Rocks and stones were thrown at her, and on many occasions, these rocks were a great weight, up to nearly 9 kilograms on one occasion. They were also magnetic and had other odd properties. Soon, rocks stopped being thrown, and her furniture was instead thrown around. Maria was also attacked, and viciously so. She was slapped, bitten, beaten, and more. She even had needles inserted into her skin by an unseen entity, embedded so deep within the skin they had to be removed by a doctor. That sounds like acupuncture to me. The poltergeist tried to suffocate her in her sleep, and her clothing even caught fire. Eventually, after Maria went to see a medium, it was found that she was subject to these attacks because of her actions in a previous life. It was thought that Maria had been a witch, but a bad witch, and that she was being attacked by a spirit that she had tormented in her previous life. Maria sadly committed suicide at age 16 so she could put an end to the activity. Yeah, that's sad. Don't really hear a lot of stories about people committing suicide as a result of a poltergeist. Here's another story here. I don't know if Kelsey already covered this. This was
What's the name of it?
I've lost it. Where'd it go?
Poltergeist, take it away.
Yeah, you already talked about this one. Let's see. Where'd it go? Here, let's see. Greyfriars, I already covered that. Indianapolis. Yeah, I think you did. Well, let's see. The Thornton Heath case. Yeah, you already read that one earlier. So I think that's all that I have then on the poltergeist stories.
Well,
Let me double check here.
That is fine. So there's really a broad definition we can get out of the word poltergeist, it seems, and I've always defined it as being that type of ghost that makes you lose your keys or moves this around or opens the drawers in the kitchen. That kind of a playful Casper type ghost, if you know what I'm saying, and more of a nuisance than a fearful thing. But from the stories that we've heard tonight, you kind of get a different read on it. Some people identify it as a pretty evil entity.
Yeah, demon.
instead of just a wayward child.
I have not personally experienced a poltergeist. I was just now, a few minutes ago, thinking, did any of my haunted items ever have any poltergeist activity reported? But I don't know of any.
Ah,
So I'm grateful of that. There is the mirror I blessed that did have some. I don't think that was I don't think that was so much a poltergeist as it was something demonic, because they actually saw a shadow figure in their house that came out of that mirror, and it pulled hair and scratched and slapped, and I blessed it, and that sucker's not causing anybody any harm. It's hidden away,
yeah.
wrapped
Well,
up and blessed.
first words he uses blessing things like, I'm going to bless you out.
Blessed are you.
So there you go. Folks, don't forget, join us next week. It's going to be a very, very good show. I mean, just a super, super good show. You added a couple of things in there on top of that. What's that? Did you add something in there? Oh, yeah, the girl. Yeah. This couple here is Celeste and Don of Peak Team Peak, 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 the name. And they have literally and still travel around the country. And they're Bigfoot cryptid hunters, and they take it very seriously. They're not game players. They're not, out trying to seek fame and fortune. They've gotten a little bit of fame because some of their stories that they freely share on social media have gained them a little bit of attention. Don, who is the guy there next to that beautiful woman, he was an angler, fisherman. He's won all kind of awards, so he'd been in outdoor magazine, different places. He was kind of already a well-known entity for an outdoorsman, and that's what they do. They travel together. They do this together, and they have some very interesting stories that you guys don't want to miss. Show up on time next week, 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time is when we start. And then we go like right now. We're about to end it at 9 p.m. here in 1 minute. Catherine joined us. And what do you have to say? Catherine? Earth?
I was coming to say good night.
She's come to say good night. So everybody say good night to Catherine.
Good night. Good night.
Good night, Catherine.
Good night.
Thank you guys for joining us. Better late than never. And we're not picking on anybody, but Kevin's the only one we pick on here. Make sure again there will not be, unless there's a fluke in schedules or something, there'll not be a haunted doll session, because we want to spend that 2 hours with Don and Celeste.
Give me a break here.
So be thinking of your cryptid Bigfoot questions. Do a little research about Don and Celeste, Team Peak, Peak, and have some questions ready for them. And let's have a really big show next week.
I just want to know why their feet are so big.
I don't know. Ask Catherine. She's got a market on that. I know. I'm going to piss her off.
You better be glad I don't have the camera on.
There you go.
I was going to stick my foot in your face.
Oh, no. It's probably a smelly foot, too. It was in the river magnet fishing earlier. Make sure you join us over in Abnormal, Alabama, where we do post some of these magnet fishing escapades of the Alabama's very own lady magnet fisher person. And on TikTok, Catherine shares them as well as I do. I believe my TikTok is at KelseyGraham04. And so anyway, have a good night. And we will see you next week. The same time, the same place, with a different subject matter. Buenas noches.